For installing the clutch pedal, I tried several different things. The first thing I tried was using a left-hand drive 540 pedal cluster. That did not work as there was interference with the steering column, and even though they look kind of similar, the left-hand drive ones do not suit right-hand drive cars. I found that out. It was interesting trying it, but it didn't work, so I moved on. The clutch pedals and I believe also the brake pedals, are a different shape between the left-hand drive and the right-hand drive. So if you are ordering a replacement part, please check and make sure that it is correct for your car, especially if you are in New Zealand or another country where you use right-hand drive, as the default might be left-hand drive. Anyway, what I ended up doing was using the return spring, so that spring there, and the master cylinder from the left-hand drive 540 pedal cluster. The 540 clutch master cylinder works fine, and so does that return spring. Now, that return spring might be a little bit heavier than a standard 528. I'm not sure on that, but it works fine, and the clutch feel is pretty good. That bracket there with the hole in it is for the clutch sensor. Now, as this car was an automatic, obviously, it didn't have that sensor there, and that's primarily so the for the cruise control, this car doesn't have cruise control fitted, so the wiring for fitting a manual conversion and retaining cruise control, I don't have that information yet. If I do a manual conversion on a car that does have cruise control, I will try to retain that function and will do a update at that point. Anyway, there is, at least in my installation, no switch for the clutch. So if you wanted to, you could put a bypass in so that the car doesn't start unless the clutch is depressed or something like that. Anyway, what I did for the clutch pedal itself was go to the BMW dealer and order a replacement clutch pedal. It was about $80 New Zealand, and it just fits on the standard pedal cluster housing. Now, I have a New Zealand E39 pedal cluster here, but without the pedals, and it is missing the throttle pedal shaft. I pulled that out, and as you can see, this is the the brake pedal pin, and this is the clutch pedal pin. With an automatic car, the brake pedal is just larger, and there's no clutch, obviously. If you want to use the same set here, but make it manual, what I suggest is do what I did and use the rubber, I'm not going to show you, this rubber cover for the pedal. Use that as a template for your brake pedal and just cut down your brake pedal and put that over it. I am an engineer, so I cut it with an angle grinder, and it worked very well. You can get an angle grinder for about $100 if you don't have one, and just trim that down using this as a template. Fit this over it, and it fits very tightly. There's no movement in that whatsoever, and other than that rubber piece, which is obviously different than the automatic one, there's no cost. The left-hand drive rubbers do fit right-hand drive pedals, if you're interested. The throttle might be slightly different, but I doubt it. The clutch rubber also fits, and I just put that on from the 540 left-hand drive pedal set. And as I mentioned before, that spring transfers across, and in the automatic housing here, there is already pre-drilled holes and mounts for, sorry, it's off camera, the clutch master cylinder. So those are already all pre-drilled and ready to go. For the actual installation of the clutch master cylinder, you will need to drill a hole to run the clutch line. Unlike the E36, there is not a pre-drilled hole, at least on the right-hand drive cars. It's possible left-hand drive cars are different, but all the cars I have, none of them are pre-drilled, pre or post facelift. So I had to drill a hole. That hole, I will try to get the camera back up in here so you can see, is, sorry for the shaking, we get behind that spring, there. So you see where the bottom of the clutch master cylinder is, then the pipe comes out, there's a little clip-in fitting, then the pipe comes out, and I've bent it around to go in that hole. Now that hole is ugly, and as I said, I was working in a shed at the time, I didn't have the best access to that, and I wanted it done, so I knocked a hole in it. The best tools I found to use were pre-drill it with the largest drill bit you can get, ideally a 13 or even a little bit larger, and then use a die grinder to open it up and smooth it out. At some point, probably when I put in a new clutch, I will pull that clutch line out and smooth out that hole and put a rubber bung in it. But as it is, there's enough clearance. It doesn't look like it at this camera angle, but if I could get around a little bit more, you'd see that there is enough clearance that it's not going to rub on it or cut through that line. So it is safe, and I have touched up the paint around that edge so it's not going to rust or cause any issues like that. I'll now go around and show you what it looks like on the other side. So if we come around here, I have opened this all back up so you can see. Probably not a lot. The clutch line comes out underneath the brake booster, and it's actually slightly up from the bottom of the brake booster, so once it comes through the hole it needs to bend down along underneath the brake booster and then come up this side. Now when you do this, I very strongly recommend that you remove the whole brake booster assembly. I'm not sure if it's possible to do it with this still in place. I didn't find it possible, and even if it is, it will save you an immense amount of time if you just go ahead and remove it. To do that, you need to remove those two fittings there. They're the brake lines that go to the ABS pump. Some of them it may be easier just to remove directly from the pump. It depends which way you prefer to do it, really. Anyway, once those are removed, it will drain a lot of brake fluid down here. Brake fluid is corrosive, so please at least do not allow it to sit on the paint. If it touches it at all, ideally put something down there to catch it, and if you have some sort of suction device, remove as much brake fluid as you can before disconnecting those lines, and it'll mean there's minimal drainage. Once those lines are disconnected and these hoses or wires above it have been unplugged and out of the way, there are 2 or 4 nuts depending on your car. I'm not sure if it's a regional thing or just a model thing or just whatever design they happen to use that day, but some have only 2 bolts, some have 4. I believe the 540 left-hand drive pedal set I got only had 2, but it did have the camera focus, these holes in the back for 4, and then I could just drill them out. But anyway, so you'll have 2 or 4. I believe they're about a 13 mil nut. You'll need to remove those. If I get up in there, you can see the 2 bottom ones there, and then just pull that pin out from the brake pedal, obviously, and then that whole booster brake assembly should just slide out. It might take a little bit of fiddling to get it right out, but it's not really that hard. Once that's out, you'll have a reasonable amount of room to work in here. mark out that hole as accurately as you can, drill it, clean it up, and you will probably have to bend that line a little bit. Now, onto the clutch line I used. I couldn't find a E39 manual clutch line. The only one I had supplied from the wreckers was a E36 hard clutch line that did not fit and didn't have the right fitting for that clutch master cylinder. So I believe it was about $50 from the BMW dealer. I got the factory clutch line that goes with that special clip-on fitting from the clutch master cylinder, and the piece is about, say, 150, 200 millimeters long, probably about 200 millimeters long, and it's a hard line ending in a screw fitting where it would then connect to the remainder of the factory hard line. It's bent in kind of a funny shape, but so long as you don't kink it and bend it around something with a gentle radius, you can bend it to new shapes, as I have done here. I got that, clipped that obviously into the clutch master cylinder, ran it to here, put all this back in place, and then what I did was I went to the local clutch shop and had them make up a brake line with the appropriate fittings for there and where it fits onto the clutch slave cylinder, and I believe I had 1.5 to 2 meters of line. This is just the rubber brake line like would go between the end of the hard line and your brake caliper. The total cost of that I believe was about $60 New Zealand to have that line made up, and the huge advantage of having a long flex line like that is you can run it anywhere. As you can see, I've run it up around here, down there, and then I can just zip tie it to hoses and wires as it goes, and it fit very nicely and is very easy to run. When I finish the conversion on my E36 328, I'm doing the same thing. Instead of using the hard line, it's just a lot easier to run, and because clutch line pressure is quite a bit lower than brake pressure, you don't have that squishy feeling that you would if you tried to run the line that long that wasn't braided for brakes. If you ran a soft line like that for brakes, the brake feel wouldn't be good, but because it's such lower pressure, you can't feel it at all. It feels just like the hard line. Anyway, once that's done, put back together. If you don't touch up the paint, that's fairly important, and do check to make sure there isn't any brake fluid residue, or it will eat into your paint and cause major rust issues. You are good to go. If you do not have a parts car to work from, I would suggest just go to a dealer or possibly a place like, I can't remember the name offhand. It's anyway, the American supplier that you get all the BMW parts from. I cannot for the life of me remember the name offhand. Anyway, go to them if they sell it. Get the clutch pedal, the rubbers, and the spring and clutch master cylinder, and you should be good to go. The little clips that hold on the end there, hopefully you can see that, you should be able just to go to a local hardware store and pick those up, as they're pretty common. If I can go to my local parts store, which doesn't even sell Imperial bolts, and get those clips, you should be able to pretty much anywhere. So that was it for the clutch installation. Out of the whole manual conversion process, that is the most involved process and requires the most tools. What I used was a drill and a die grinder. Pretty simple, and it just takes a little bit of care setting up. Give yourself a few hours to do that, and don't try using left-hand drive parts on a right-hand drive car. So, we'll move on now.